When you think of the MAC, you think the cradle of coaches, the cradle of ADs, the history, the passionate student sections, the regional rivalries that pass through generations, with artillery aimed directly at their arch rival, the historic one-in-a-lifetime seasons, and whiteouts galore. And now it might be time for MAC fans to board a connection to the California Zephyr and let a Mid-American celebration commence to welcome a 13th football member to the MAC family, the Sacramento State Hornets. To enter FBS, Sacramento State will be paying a record-setting price tag of $23 million, $5 million to the NCAA and $18 million to the MAC. The MAC will pocket $18 million from Sacramento State. If the MAC distributes all $18 million of that to its 12 members, then each member will pocket $1.5 million. Alternatively, if the MAC were to use $6 million to bribe a new member and then leave $12 million for the rest of its 12 members, then each MAC school will pocket $1 million. For the MAC and Sacramento State, this was a mutually beneficial business deal where both sides understand that it's going to be short-term. It's a 5-year contract from 2026 to 2030 for $18 million, so each MAC school will get at least $1 million. Sacramento State will not get a conference distribution, so all MAC schools will keep their full share, and Sacramento State will cover the air travel of visiting MAC teams. Therefore, MAC schools will see no increase in their travel expenses. And all the MAC schools come away as bandits here, as each MAC school is paid over $1 million to keep their full conference distribution share, see no increase in travel expenses, play 1 or 2 games in recruiting-rich NorCal over those 5 years, all for a contractual member that the MAC does not have to renew after 2030, so their hands are not tied long-term. It was shrewd businessship by the MAC as they found a way to creatively leverage an asset, being the FBS ticket, and monetize a business transaction, $18 million for a 5-year contract, with no downside. For Sacramento State, the cost was worth it to their administration to break through the FBS gatekeeping, especially with the risk of the Mountain West potentially not being interested in them if UC Davis moves up. Sacramento State seized an opportunity in their control, bribing the MAC, instead of relying on someone else out of their control, hoping for a Mountain West invite in order to move up. There were 16 weeknight MACtion games in 2025, 7 on the Deuce, 6 on the U, and 3 on CBS Sports Network. Sacramento State opening the late night window theoretically could shift 2 ESPNU games to the Deuce. However, if ESPN elects not to utilize that late night weeknight window, then Sacramento State hosting 2 weeknight games could still mean 2 more MAC schools host another Saturday game, as 2 of those 16 weeknight MACtion games would shift from the current 12 MAC schools to Sacramento State. And of course, the MAC is negotiating a new TV deal soon, so the number of weeknight MACtion games could change anyway. A benefit of adding a California school for the MAC is football recruiting. Here is the percentage of 3, 4, or 5-star recruits in 24 and 25 per 24/7 Sports for each state. And California came in third at 9.6%. Of course, people could point out that playing games in Sacramento is not going to get you SoCal recruits. So if you were to split up California recruits by NorCal and SoCal, about 68.9% of those California recruits were in SoCal. So once you divide California up and make SoCal and NorCal each individual states, SoCal would drop from 3rd to 4th, from 9.6% to 6.6%, and NorCal would still end up in 7th with 3.0%. NorCal would be behind only Texas, Florida, Georgia, SoCal, Ohio, and Alabama. Until a week ago, the largest DMA without FBS football was number 20, Sacramento. So in theory, there is a void in the sports entertainment market in Sacramento for casual fan and corporate dollars that Sacramento State can fill. Here are the 10-year Sagarin rankings for the group of 6. The MAC comes in 5th with an average of 106.2. Leading the way in the MAC is Toledo in 71st, Ohio in 80th, Western in 82nd, and Miami in 85th. In 5-year D ratings, which is a computer ranking in FCS football, Sacramento State was in 8th, behind only South Dakota State, North Dakota State, the Montanas, South Dakota, UC Davis, and North Dakota. Here is the max football spending in 2023-2024 per the Knight Commission. Sacramento State was at $7.3 million. However, that was 2 years ago, and you know they've increased their football spending since then. 2 years ago, they were pretty close to 11th and 12th in the MAC, and by now, I would bet that they've reached the floor of the MAC. And odds are Sacramento State's football spending will trend towards the middle of the MAC for reasons I'm about to explain. Here are the athletic budgets in 23-24 per the Knight Commission. There's 3 bars here. The top bar, the gray bar, is how much of their athletic revenues are from institutional support. The middle bar, the white bar, is how much of their athletic revenues are from student fees. And then the bottom bar, the colored bar, is how much of their athletic revenues are left over after you isolate institutional support and student fees. 2 years ago, Sacramento State's athletic revenues were $43.1 million, which would have ranked second in the MAC. Although people will note that Sacramento State's non-subsidized budget of $5.7 million would have been lowest in the MAC. Now, Extra Points was able to obtain Sacramento State's records for 24-25, which was last year, which is a year more up to date, and their Sacramento State's athletic revenues went from $43.1 million all the way to $47.3 million. So they increased their athletic budget by $4 million in a year. Now, in May, the State Hornet reported that students at Sacramento State approved an increase from $195 to $276 annually starting in fall 2025 for athletics-related fees, followed by another bump to $331 by fall 2027. $195 to $331 would be an increase of $136, and Sac State has an enrollment of 31,274. You multiply 31,274 by $136 and you have an increase of $4.25 million. That means Sac State will add $4.25 million via an increase in athletics-related fees alone. Furthermore, the 25-26 operating fund budget shows $11.35 million allocated to athletics, an increase of $1.15 million from 23-24's $10.2 million. So you add $5.4 million, which is comprised of the $4.25 million increase in athletics-related fees and $1.15 million increase in institutional support, and you put that $5.4 million on top of the $47.3 million budget in 24-25, and that brings the athletic budget up to $52.7 million. So once we hit 2027, Sacramento State's athletic budget will be at least $11 million higher than it was 3-4 years earlier. Here is the self-generated revenue per the Knight Commission database in 23-24. There's 3 bars here. Top bar is sponsorships, advertising, and licensing. Middle bar, the white bar, is donor contributions, and the bottom bar is ticket sales. Now, Sacramento State did have the lowest self-generated revenue with $1.8 million in 23-24. And when you look at the 3-year average donor contributions from 21-22 through 23-24, Sacramento State was the lowest again at $0.8 million. However, those two numbers do not tell the whole story because the Sac-12 operates independently of the athletic department, and the Sac-12 is a collective of state legislators, city leaders, business executives, labor representatives, and Sacramento State alumni who are a booster club of sorts and independent of the university and operate separately from the athletic department. And they have carried the heavy lifting for fundraising for Sacramento State. So all the fundraising they've done is not reflected in the athletic department's budget reports. So this is a rare case where you can kind of not put much stock into what the school's donor contributions are in the Knight Commission database. Sacramento State's community backing and corporate backing in a big market that has a sports entertainment void makes them a unique case that will likely be an exception to the rule and probably more successful than many think.